Hey guys, I'm showing you a recent Starcraft 2 game I played. It's a TBT matchup, which is my worst matchup by far, actually. It's game like 190. Probably like I think my like 40th game in this season, 2018 season one. So at the time of this game, and at the time of the recording, I'm about gold 2, so I'm not a super skilled player by any means, but just trying to improve. So the building I'm using is Pig's 2-1-1 build. It's really simple, nothing too fancy. Just focusing on that sort of like beginner macro type style. Just trying to produce a lot of SCVs, trying to make sure I don't get supply blocked, that kind of thing. The build he uses goes for a drop at I think around like 5 minutes or something like that, which I think is like pretty standard for a bio build. But I'm not going to be doing that, as you'll see. For whatever reason, I don't go for that in this game. But yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing. What I'm going to be focusing on today, mostly, and what I've been sort of trying to focus on in game the most while I'm playing is like my opening build order. I want to get that really tight, so I just think it's like a good place to start, good foundation. Because if you have a solid economy, then you're probably good to go, good to get better at the game, a lot easier. So speed up a bit here. I do the build okay up until, let's see. Okay, so I'm building my second supply depot, and I forget to build a gas here. You'll see I'm still not the greatest at this build. I've gotten a lot better since this recording, but yeah, I definitely make a few mistakes here. So just building my second barracks. My opponent's also building a command center, so he's not doing anything too crazy. He doesn't, I don't know, he's this weird wall-off structure. I don't know what the hell's going on there. But he's doing looks like a one-on-one build. So yeah, that's what he's up to. Pretty standard here. I do something pretty dubious. I think, is it the? Yeah, okay. So the racks, my second rack's tech lab is late, which is obviously pretty important to get up so I can get stem early enough. Yeah, just building factory. I'm finally getting this gas up, which is good. Something I notice throughout this game, and it's sort of like I notice it a lot only during replays, because obviously while you're playing the game, it's so hard to keep track of every little thing that's going on. But if I just sit here and look at my command center sometimes, going through replays, and it just shows me, it sort of like drills it into my head like how important it is not to miss the SCVs. Like as you can see right here, there's a good it's been like 3 seconds or whatever where I'm not producing an SCV, and that'll just sort of build up over the course of the game. So yeah, one of the little things, this is pretty small. I think Pig puts a second worker on this gas as soon as it goes up, but I'm not too sure if that's optimal. Here, this sort of almost isn't even really the build he does. This is just sort of I just watched that video a couple times, I think, when I was playing this game, and I just sort of did something similar. Since then, I've sort of worked on tightening up that build a lot more and adapting to that build a lot more closely. So which I didn't really notice until I went back to it, how sort of far off what I was doing from what he was doing. So I build a tech lab on my factory here, going for siege tanks instead of the the reactor, and then switch the starport onto the reactor and build some medevacs. So yeah, this is a pretty quiet opening. Nothing too crazy happens in this game. I was doing this for a while, and it works in some games, but I'm sort of not as big of a fan of it anymore. Is I would just sort of try to macro really hard and really tight, and then just contain them to their second base. I'm pretty sure this is not a good idea, at least if you're trying to play optimally at a higher level, because I mean they just have a defender's advantage. They'll probably just have more stuff than I will, which is sort of sort of an issue in this game, though there are a few other things that go wrong that I definitely could have improved on. So yeah, so let's see here. So I'm going to speed up a little bit to this sort of first engagement. So here I just sort of test to see what's going on in his base. I see he's got a siege tank set up, so I'm not going to push in. I'm just going to sort of sit out here and wait for him either to come to me, make him make the mistake, or maybe I'll set up like a neat drop. I'll just get a medevac here, which you'll see me do later, and just sort of drop it in his main. I don't know if I'll tell you in the future videos what happens, but I'll tell you that I do lose this game, and I'm probably going to upload more games I lose than I win, if not only games I lose, just for the sake of trying to improve and looking at my mistakes. So here I think this is pretty good. I kill, I think it was 3 SCVs, and I delay a little bit of mining time, and here I should have just gotten out. I don't really know what I was thinking. I think I lost a couple, yeah, I lost like 3 Marines here. And yeah, this is just pretty dubious. Again, another thing that you don't really notice, or I didn't really notice until I sort of looked back on the game. And if you just spend time just looking at this drop, you can see that like this is obviously bringing it back in here. He can see me go all the way through here and land right here. So he sees it coming. There's no real reason to do that. I also know from my pushing earlier a little bit that he has a siege tank set up down here. So if it's covering here, it's like almost certainly covering this back area. So that was also sort of a dubious move there. Something I didn't notice is that obviously during the game I didn't notice is that he has a lot fewer workers than I do. So I think something obviously I can't really count on that happening in games. But my macro, at least in this game, is pretty significantly better than his. He's like 8 SCVs behind me. So as long as I don't do anything stupid, which I obviously do, but if I didn't do anything stupid in this game, there's a good chance that I'll just win these engagements through economy. So here I'm just, like I said, I'm sort of have this like idea of containing him. So I'm just trying to sort of like annoy him with this siege tank. I'm not trying to do anything crazy. But yeah, as you'll also notice, I think at this point, yeah. So he has 1 attack upgrade. So I think that looking at this later, I think that had I maybe had an upgrade and had I saved that medevac earlier and dropped the Marines in, it's possible that I could have won this engagement. Again, probably a better idea just to try to harass him with drops than to try to like contain him in this early stage of the game. When having, when his like defender's advantage, just having a couple more Marines or whatever is like a lot more significant because the armies are relatively smaller than they are later games. So yeah, I'm sort of put on the back foot here due to this engagement. As you can see, another thing I noticed is I have a lot of minerals saved up, and this is something I've obviously been working on as a newer player. It's tough to get used to, but I guess that's at least sort of a good sign. It means that in a way, at least it means that my economy is like doing fairly well. I just have to work on spending that on just racks. I think I have, what is it? Yeah, I have a good amount of racks. So I have 8 set up, I think. 8, maybe 9? I thought I had 9. Oh wow, 3 more. Okay. So I have 11, I think. Yeah, so I should probably work on balancing that out. I think I get my upgrades. Yeah, so I got +1 attack and no armor. So I probably should have prioritized that more. Get a few more SCVs on gas, that type of thing. And you'll see here he loses this engagement just because my army is bigger. I have the siege tank set up. And then he's sort of, yeah, I don't really know what he's doing here. But you'll see that he does drop at a later point. Another thing to note is he is stuck on 2 bases. Or he's not stuck on 2 bases, he's just sort of later than me getting up his 3rd. And I think that's also something that I could, take notice of when he gets his 3rd. And just, I mean, if I had my 3rd up, I've had my 3rd up for, I think it's like 4 or 5 minutes at this point, not that long, but I've had it up for a while now, so I think that's one way I can gauge my economic advantage in the game. Like, as you can see here, this is like ridiculous. I'm like 25 SCVs ahead of him. So, I mean, I I get to my 70 or so is where I like to stop SCVs pretty quickly. So if I can just sort of take that macro advantage and sit on that, I think that I could probably win more games, or at least could have won this game. But if you guys have any like tips for lower level players trying to gauge like how well their opponent's economy is doing, that'd be helpful, because I find that kind of difficult. Also, sort of keeping track of his army. I try to scan every once in a while, but I don't know. That's something I'm not obviously the best at either. But yeah. So as you can see here, we'll speed this up a little bit. So I'm moving out. I think there's another engagement. Yeah, there's another engagement coming up, and this is just me mismicroing my medevacs. I'm sure every new Terran player has done this at some point, where they just F2 their full army and their medevacs go first because they're faster. So yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I lose this engagement. Yeah, he's still. So the upgrades are even, but again, yeah, I think he just had a bigger army there, which is pretty dubious on my part. He does drop me here at some point. Yeah, okay, so he's moving in with like this huge drop, right? Which more or less ends the game. So I do have towers going up, but I think that having these towers up earlier, Tower 2, would obviously be helpful. To be honest, I find that like even having towers sometimes doesn't help that much. So maybe keeping some of my armory back here. I've been trying to, in my more recent games, after I looked at this game, is to just sort of plant a siege tank near each of my CCs, if I can spare it, just so if they drop in, at least there's some sort of resistance. Or maybe have a Viking just sort of patrolling over here, so that I can burn a medevac or two, which is usually how big a drop is. I don't think there's typically this big of a drop, but he's trying to end the game here, which he does successfully. So I'm attacking as he's attacking, but the problem is that he's sort of building up his army as I'm trying to attack his. So and I'm sort of not. I'm rallying across the map instead of rallying over here to try to defend my base, which is obviously pretty important. I'm just sort of rallying across the map, sending my troops over there, which isn't as optimal. Also, this is something I make mistakes a lot, or this is a mistake I make a lot when I'm defending, is I'll just rally my troops to some point near their army, and like my troops will rally in one or two at a time and just get blown up, right? That's obviously not a good idea. So I find it difficult, but I'm trying to work on just sort of building up a smaller force before I go in, just sort of giving away a building or two or some SCVs or something, so that I can actually have a potential to win that engagement. In this game, I don't think that was really going to happen, but still something better. And it was off screen here, but basically my whole army got wiped out over here by his defending force. So I mean, this game's pretty much over at this point. But yeah, so just to sort of summarize, I think that like things I took away from this game is dealing with drops. Obviously, at the end here, you can see is a pretty big one. So just I was watching BCQD's videos, and he had a mech build, which is obviously not what I'm doing here, but he does have in that build he patrols a Viking back and forth here, which I think is like obviously pretty clever, pretty smart idea. As I was saying earlier, just to defend against drops, and maybe he plants a couple of units around the map just to have a better sense of when his opponent's army is, or where his opponent's army is. And he builds sensor towers, a sensor tower or two, which I've also been doing more so in my more recent games. And another big question I have is, other than locating my opponent's army, which I touched on earlier, was when to attack. I never really know when I should move out for an attack. So sometimes, as you can see in this game, I'll go for like a sort of contain, like an early sort of contain, which will occasionally end the game, but more often than not, I think I just sort of give away a bit of my army doing that. And more recently, I've been following Pig's build of getting a drop early around 5 minutes, setting it in, and that's sort of my first attack. but just sort of gauging when's a good time to strike, where to strike, maybe when he's setting his third, that sort of thing. But yeah, I'm just trying to improve. If you guys have any tips, just let me know, leave in the comment section below, and appreciate you watching. Thanks. Bye.